Once more. Okay, after the intense and fruitful sessions of the first part of the afternoon, where we looked at the water-related SDG goals and targets, and tools and challenges for implementation, we now move to the next, to the last of the panels of today, which will look into the views on progress, best practices, and lessons learned during the International Decade for Action, Water for Life, 2005-2015. And I would just like to let you know that we have meeting rooms available for participants. There are various meeting rooms in case you need them during the conference breaks these following days. So if you need them, please contact registration. And now I would like to give the floor to the chair of this session, who is Adriano García Loigorri, who is technical advisor, Office of the Director General of Water at the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Environment of Spain. You have the floor. Thank you.
Sí. Yes, in English. Thank you very much, Natalia. Well, in 2005, the water decade began, and it was finished this year. So I think this is the best moment to look backwards in order to get lessons learned, and then to look forward in order to implement that lessons learned and improve water and sanitation issues. 2015 will be a key year in the water and sanitation agenda, because the General Assembly of the United Nations will approve finally the SDGs. And the Open Working Group has prepared a report with a more ambitious agenda than the MDG and the UN, because it will take into account not just access to water and sanitation, but quality, efficiency, and water-related disasters. And if we look backwards, we will see that the MDG report of 2013 shows that water supply target has been achieved. So the question is, should we be very optimistic? I don't think so. Why? Because 800 million people lack access to water, and despite the goal has been achieved, we have disparities between rich and poor countries. We have between rural and urban areas, and the definition is it's not it's not enough representative of what access should be, in our opinion. For example, it doesn't take into account quality issues. In sanitation, the situation is worse. We have 2,500 million people lacking access to basic sanitation. So should we be very pessimistic? Well, I don't think so. Why? Because in 2005, from 1990 to 2013, 2,000 million people have obtained access to latrines, toilets, or basic sanitation. In July 2014, the Open Working Group has included a dedicated goal to water. I think this is a breakthrough. I think looking at the MDGs, it was just 2 targets. We have a complete water sanitation goal in these MDGs, and I think it's more important. What is more important is that these MDGs are being prepared with this group that is formed by the government. So I think this decade has put in the agenda, in the politicians' agenda, this water and sanitation issues. And I think that's in part because of the work of United Nations. Now we have to talk about indicators. That there's a big work forward in next year. We think we have we highlight the importance of from the government of Spain on planning, on knowledge of resources, on a correct allocation of resources. And well, since I'm from the government of Spain, I have to speak also about this office, Zaragoza office, that's been working since 2006. It's been funded by the government of Spain, the city of Zaragoza, and the regional government of Aragon. And later on, I think it would be very interesting if you tell us your opinion about the United Nations work during this decade, if it has been useful or not, and specifically about this office, Zaragoza office. So that's it. Like now, well, this session would be about views on progress, best practices, and lessons learned during the International Decade for Action Water for Life. And something we have learned is that we can, from the public sector, we can work alone regarding water supply. We have to involve many actors. We have to involve stakeholders. We have to involve women, since women are, especially in the development countries, the gender that suffers lack of water because they have to collect water, transport water. They take care of the children, so they're crucial in the water and sanitation. The business engagement, I think we have to think about if from the public sector we have been working properly with the private sector. If we work better than 10 years ago, what are the lessons learned, and what if there's a long way to improve, or we are in the limit of the improvement. And then local authorities. Local authorities are also crucial, and not only in developing countries, but in developed countries. They're usually in charge of water supply and sanitation. But in both development and non-development countries, they usually have a lack of money. They usually have a lack of knowledge, and usually have lack of support from regional governments or from country governments. And that's an issue even in developed countries. And with this economic crisis, we have a problem. We have problems with aging infrastructure that's been built decades ago. It needs money to its maintenance, but there's a problem everywhere, and how to fund all these necessary investments for infrastructure and for maintenance the water supply. So now I give the floor to Ursula Scheller-Preuss, Chair of Global Water Partnership on Progress on Stakeholder Engagement during the decade.
Muchas gracias, señoras, señores, colegas, participantes. Es para mí un gran honor de estar aquí y hablar con ustedes sobre los asuntos relacionados a la década de Water for Life. I will now continue in English. This is easier for me. I would like to thank the organizers for providing this wonderful opportunity to analyze the impact that the water decade has had on improving sustainable water management, and in what way ensuing thinking has continued to change our water perception and to address the main issues of the post-2015 SDGs. There is tangible progress, so I'm not a pessimist. No doubt that the water decade proved to be helpful in a number of respects, namely with regards to accelerating the achievements of the MDGs in the water area. The joint report UNICEF and WHO from last year says that today 116 countries have met the MDG target of access to improved sources of drinking water, and 77 countries have met the target of improved sanitation. There is also a growing recognition sorry, that if we wish to manage water resources effectively, then we must approach this together in an integrated manner. The Global Water Partnership with its partners have been tirelessly driving a worldwide movement towards integrated water resource management. We are gratified by the fact that there is encouraging progress, as reported in the UN Water Status Report, on the application of integrated approaches to the development, management, and use of water resources presented at Rio+20. Indeed, from the 2012 UN survey of 134 countries, 82% have embarked on reforms to improve the enabling environment and integrate approaches to water resources management. 65% have developed integrated water resource management plans, and 34% say that they are at an advanced stage of implementation. This decade has witnessed the emergence of new and modified paradigms. The green economy, green growth, and the water, energy, food nexus have become subjects of international debate, reinforcing the need for an integrated approach. But the conceptual attractiveness of paradigms is not enough. They must be applicable in a fast-changing world. The SDG process led to a growing recognition that water is at the core of sustainable development, as it is closely linked to a number of key global challenges. We are at a critical moment where countries are negotiating a dedicated water goal in the post-2015 development agenda. We have heard about this morning already. This stands to be a game changer for our efforts, and it is essential that we work in partnership to support countries in these negotiations. Last but not least, I would like to salute the efforts of the government of Tajikistan to raise water cooperation as a global concern through initiating United Nations General Assembly resolution declaring 2013 the International Year of Water Cooperation. Josefina has mentioned that earlier as well. Dealing with water problems requires genuine cooperation at all levels, where shared goals motivate diverse stakeholders to pull in the same direction. The Dushanbe and the Budapest summits underscored the fact that much is intellectually and technically within our grasp. What is often missing is the political will and skill to achieve global and regional cooperation. But the business is not yet finished. Despite tangible progress, many issues addressed in this decade remain unsolved. In the area of stakeholder engagement, much more remains to be done, in particular involving the engagement of women and youth. I've been very pleased that last year the Global Water Partnership released its gender strategy, and I am hopeful that we can begin to move forward in taking concrete steps to engage and empower women in water management efforts and the broader issues related to water. Evidently, major shifts in both policies and conceptual approaches to water are called for in order to reach a more desirable future and limit calamities that can otherwise be foreseen. Building on the foundation that we collectively laid during this water decade. And in order to move away from where we are, arguably 4 clear areas of action are, in my view, required. First, we need to match short and long-term action. In the context of climate change, rapid urbanization, and growing disparities, the scale and complexity of water challenges require investing in the long term, more than 10 years, as well as the short term. Many complex processes are involved, and long-term commitment is needed in order to succeed. Second, we must encourage partnerships. We need the contributions of all the stakeholders. There is no doubt that no single set of actors holds the key to effectively addressing the challenge of effective management of water resources. Governments, both national and local, obviously have a key role. But the private sector and the NGOs play also a major role. Working together is not optional. It is essential if we are to achieve our vision of a water-secure world. We can and must achieve that vision. This requires fundamental changes in values, beliefs, perceptions, and political positions among all stakeholders. Third, we must strive towards the systematic sharing of knowledge. To bring about change, people need knowledge to understand the state of water resources and the tools needed to sustainably develop and manage them. Knowledge can stimulate behavioral change towards a new water culture. We must engage in a learning process. We must monitor continuously and learn as we act in order to promote a real evolution thinking, not just a change in emphasis of current activities. Fourth and lastly, we must recognize the importance of international cooperation, including, and this is very dear to my heart, South-South cooperation. It is essential that we proceed with the effective implementation of the many recommendations of the Dushanbe and Budapest summits, just to mention those. This cannot wait. I want to state here that GWP is actively involved in all the elements of this challenging agenda with its very vast network of partners. This conference is a call to action as well as a celebration of the progress already underway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ursula, for your excellent presentation. And I will highlight the 4 areas you mentioned about the short and long-term investments to encourage partnerships, how important is the knowledge, and the importance of international cooperation. Okay, thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Alice Baumann-Dentener. She works for Women for Water Partnership and lessons learned on women engagement.
Well, buenas tardes, good afternoon. I would like to start by saying that I'm very pleased that the United Nations General Assembly has agreed to do a comprehensive review. And that's not because we want to applaud ourselves about everything that we have achieved, but especially for us also as Women for Water Partnership, what we want to get out of this review is to gain insight in what has held us back to achieve even more, because the challenge is still out there. We are not halfway there even. And in this whole process, the continuation after the decade, we have common but differentiated responsibilities, as is one of the Dublin principle, the Rio principles. And I really thank the United Nations program, the Water Decade Program for Life, for really giving us this opportunity to be here, and for always taking care of true stakeholder participation when it comes to debating, designing, and later on implementing the issue. Because, as the chair of Global Water Partnership said, it's about cooperation. And water cooperation is not only transboundary, it's specifically cooperation between stakeholders, so that those different roles come to the fore. Having said that, I'm here to talk about the achievements, the challenges, and the lessons learned of women as one of the major groups. And thank you again, Ursula, for mentioning that women are crucial and that they have to be in there, so I don't have to reiterate that. So I would like to share with you what women in general have gained and what they have achieved. That's, of course, two different things, but there are two sides of the same coin. What we have gained. No, first let me state that Women for Water Partnership is not about women as individual people of the female sex. You see, if you would talk about gender equality, very often it's about men and women and they have equal rights as a person. Women for Water Partnership is about civil society, about women as a major group, and about how you can use the social capital and the skills of women to advance implementation. So it's about stakeholder participation. Now, if we then see what women have gained, I can, of course, not forget about gender equality. And we know that there's still a gender gap and gender disparity in access to safe water and sanitation. It's maybe closing a bit, but it's still out there. But this actually is not what is on top of the agenda of the Women for Water Partnership. Access to water and sanitation is, after all, we have all agreed, is a human right. So we have to achieve universal access for men and women, rural, urban, all these sorts of things. So for us, it's about what can we as major group women contribute to make this a reality, this human right to water and sanitation. Now, in order to achieve this, and in order for women to participate, a very important gain is that women's role in realizing access is now truly acknowledged. I think we can say that. It's acknowledged and it's increasingly practiced. At national, but more importantly so, also at the local level. It's going to be increasingly more practiced. We are no longer perceived solely as a vulnerable and the disadvantaged. And that is very important. Women and women's civil society are increasingly seen as actors in their own right in this development process, as agents of change. And we can see more and more examples where women's civil society is included as an equal partner. And I want to emphasize equal, because the reality is in partnerships that some partners are more equal than others. And you can talk about participation and you can invite them, but if you don't give the facilities and the means for them to actually be there, for us to actually be there, it's not going to happen. So it's a paper participation and not a reality. But the reality is getting there. And part of that is because women's civil society has strengthened considerably. And that is also another gain. Now, if I go to the achievement side, I dare say that the acknowledgement of women's role and the strengthening of women's society, civil society participation is to a larger extent the achievement of us as women's civil society. Women for Water Partnership was founded especially for that purpose, to unite existing women's networks and organizations on the gender water development nexus. I mentioned the nexus because that's a real, let's say, untapped connection. Gender, water development, combining the three has huge potential. We cut across themes, nations, sexual and cultural boundaries. We have been founded to give women a voice and a space to exchange and to inform themselves and others, and above all, to give them the means to grow to their full capacity. I duly acknowledge, I really want to state that here, the contributions of UN agencies, national governments and local authorities, the water sector and other entities in partnering with us to achieve this. That was a partnership that has really developed throughout the decade and has brought women's civil society a lot. Now, let me move from the overall women's civil society to the individual women's organizations and what they have contributed to the Water for Life decade. Well, there are so many examples that I would stay boring you forever, so I will not do that. I will only try to say that the activities, they range from knowledge and capacity development, awareness raising on water risk, contributing to the development of policies, legal and institutional frameworks in their countries, in their subnational levels, and implementing water and sanitation provisions for communities, or developing climate resilient agriculture, payment for ecosystem services, and so forth and so forth. Civil society is very diverse, so the contributions and the work they do is very diverse. But I would like to single out one contribution that, in my view, is quite unique. Women's role in building local ownership and in organizing community engagement. That is something that women can do particularly well as civil society because of the intrinsic social capital that they have. I mean, women's network they join in all sorts of unities, and that is built on reciprocity and trust. And because you are organized that way, you can filter into if you can, how you say that, go into the capillaries of society, but also have the capacity to organize at the international level. And this is a specific contribution of women's civil society, which can greatly help and assist countries, governments to implement whatever they want to implement. Challenges and lessons learned. Josefina told me, don't forget the challenges and the lessons learned. While working on the water, gender and development interface as women's civil society in a rural setting mostly has many challenges related to traditional gender roles and gender stereotypes. But the best way to change that, we found, is changing the mindset of those who are in power at those various levels. And how do you do that? By showing the added value of involving women's civil society and show it to the governments and the local authorities. And this requires strong women's civil society groups because the challenges and the resistance they face is often very high. And I think that one of the biggest achievements with the help, for instance, of the Water for Life Decade program on advocacy and communication, why is that so important? Because they have helped us to bring these sort of elements to the fore. If you are preaching your own constituency, they say, oh yes, the women have a stake in this, but if a neutral organizations based on facts states these sorts of things and validates those things, that's very important for civil society organizations. A major challenge that I would like to bring to the fore is adequate financing for social empowerment. We talk about women's civil society as if they are considered an equal partner. Usually they're not. They don't have the collateral. They don't even have the recognition. Traditional gender roles makes that women very often do not speak in public places. I mean, I'm not the one to say, we should ask the local women's groups that are here. And to change that around requires a process of social empowerment. And this is not something that you do in 5 minutes or even in an hour or in a year. It takes time. And very often when it comes to project implementation, there is no investment in empowerment and social processes because they take long, they're not so sexy. I'm ready, yes. You see, when I get carried away, I talk too long. So that is what we think is one of the most important challenges that we face, that if you want participation, you have to finance the facilitation of participation. I only want to state one fact, which is that in the civil society concept note, you can find more, but of all the money invested, less than 1% goes to capacity building and training and education, while the added value of that is so big. Then the last tiny points I had was about information sharing, but I think that Ursula has already addressed that. If you want to implement and if you want to have good stakeholders, they have to be informed adequately. And there we see all sorts of barriers like language and information flow that I would think are an important lesson learned, that we have to invest in that. With that, I conclude, and I thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Alice. I wrote down many things, but I will read a couple of them. The women as agents of change. We should have the women should have the means to grow to a full capacity. And water, with no water, they can't grow to the full capacity. The challenge of changing our minds. That's very important, and also the capacity building. That's what I wrote down. Thank you very much. So now I give the floor to Gavin Power, the UN CEO of Water Mandate. We'll talk about lessons learned on business engagement during the decade.
Buenas tardes, and thank you for this invitation and opportunity. Gracias, Josefina. Allow me to offer 3 points, if I may, in relation to the business commitment and involvement in this agenda, especially through the lens of the United Nations Global Compact and its CEO water mandate. First, I think it's fair to say that for companies that are not involved in water service delivery, water has risen from obscurity or even neglect to becoming one of the top business issues, if not a priority, for many over the past decade. In fact, I think today or this week, the World Economic Forum has released their annual global risk mapping, which ranks water as the #1 global risk in terms of impact. It's just coming out this week, will be released and discussed at the World Economic Forum in Davos. The UN Global Compact is a reflection of this. Sea Water Mandate now has over 125 committed companies from all sectors, mainly corporate water users, some water utilities as well, and all. That's interesting. Pardon me. Thanks. Thank you. It's a bit humorous, actually. The mandate, we have now over 125 companies from all. I don't think it's mine. Mine's firmly off. So all sectors and regions, these are mainly corporate water users, but we do have water utility companies and some water service providers. That's up from 5 when the Secretary General announced and launched the Sea Water Mandate back in 2007. These companies have enormous supply chains, and several of them are actually here in this room as we speak. In addition, there are many organizations here today. I'll just name a few: AWS, Aquafed, CDP, WRI, I don't mean to miss anyone, all of whom are working actively with the international business community and private sector. So that's point 1. Second point, we've seen also during the past 10 years the evolution, really the adoption of this new concept of corporate water stewardship, which I think is really a breakthrough notion, which is a holistic approach that takes companies far beyond simple water management in their operations, but indeed throughout their supply chains, in watersheds and river basins. It also includes, to some extent, engagement in public policy and governance. The Sea Water Mandate, for example, includes 6 elements: direct operations, but then supply chain and watershed, community engagement, collective action, responsible engagement in public policy, and then this whole area of disclosure and transparency, which actually gets to the point I think, Josephine, you made earlier, or several other panels on accountability. So in the Sea Water Mandate, companies are required to disclose annually or risk expulsion from the program. It's similar to the Global Compact more broadly. We've actually expelled more than 5,000 companies for failure to demonstrate progress in relation to the 10 principles. So companies are moving, I believe, in terms of this notion of accountability and disclosure. Thirdly, we've seen and are seeing increasing interest by companies in the private sector in both the respect and the support notions surrounding the human right to water and sanitation. We're really thrilled to be here this week because tomorrow we're releasing our guide to respecting the human right to water and sanitation for companies. And this is a major announcement. We feel the first guide of its kind, and my colleague Mylan from the Pacific Institute, who's somewhere in the audience, will be, is she here in the audience? Ah, there she is. We'll be taking you through the guide tomorrow. So that's on the respect side. And then on the support side, we've done things like launch the Sea Water Mandate's Water Action Hub, which is sort of a match.com, if you will, on water projects, water and sanitation projects. So we believe, again, it's the first online digital platform for companies to find partners, governments, NGOs and others to work on specific water-related projects in key locations around the world. We have over 300 project locations that are active and mapped on this really important tool. There's also related rising interest and involvement in the whole post-2015 development agenda and the SDGs specifically, and the mandate. Sea Water Mandate, for instance, has played a really important role, I think, in actively promoting during the past few years a dedicated water and sanitation goal. And in fact, the mandate's activities over the past 2 years have been heavily oriented around the post-2015. So some of you were at our conference in Mumbai 2 years ago, in Lima earlier last year, not the COP Lima, but earlier last year we were in Lima and in Stockholm, where we've really discussed actively among the stakeholders, so these are companies but equally NGOs and others involved in the Sea Water Mandate, because it's a multi-stakeholder initiative, discussed the importance of dedicated goals and targets and really moving that process along. And so I think that's been a really important aspect of all this. I think in terms of the caveat or lesson, for me it's really that we just this needs to go mainstream within the international business community, in my opinion. Water stewardship. I mean, it's great that we've gone from 5 companies to 125 in the mandate, but in the Global Compact more broadly, we have 8,000 companies. So my objective over the next year or two is really get more Global Compact companies in, because they're a natural, they're already in the family. But really, we need to engage, all of us, more with the private sector and companies to get them really switched on and to embrace this. So I would really ask all of you, urge you, please, to advocate the Sea Water Mandate as one of the normative action frameworks for the private sector as you go out on this agenda. I'd just like to conclude by making, if I may, a broad geopolitical observation. I think this year is really, in some ways, a critical test for multilateralism. I mean, we have the Financing for Development conference in Addis Ababa. I attended the Monterey conference some years ago. And this conference will be quite critical in terms of commitments and ideas around public and private finance, I should add. We have the SDGs, of course, and we have the climate negotiations. And all of this takes place against some very disturbing global trends. Let's face it, whether it's extreme violence, inward orientation, nationalism, discrimination. The world is a very troubled place right now, and I really think this is a year we really need to pull together, revive the spirit and aims of international cooperation, and rediscover the values of the United Nations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I think this relationship between companies and this interest with the post-2015 human rights NGOs. I think perhaps 15 years ago we wouldn't talk like you did. This interest of companies. I think it's increasing. These themes. Some years ago they were worlds apart. These kind of issues and companies, and now we're listening to this interest of companies in these important issues, also in climate. So now Barbara Anton from ICLEI will talk about best practices and lessons learned by local authorities during the decade.
All right, thank you, and thank you to Josefina, who managed once again to bring me into this place, into this conference. And I think we already had a very rich afternoon again, and I'm not so sure who has the more difficult role now at this point of the program. Is it me on my side having to find your interest and give the last few words and inputs, or is it on your side who still have to listen for some more words? So I hope you can bear with me for another couple of minutes. I'm trying not to stray away too much. So I am from, and I would like to say once the full name of my organization, which is ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability. And this is maybe also why I sometimes feel a little bit lonely at these conferences, because there are not so many local government people around. So happy to see Xavier from this city of Zaragoza, which is so active and so successful and so creative and innovative in water management, that it's actually the best example for what I want to say here and for the observations that I want to share with you. I don't know, I have met a colleague from Vitoria-Gasteiz yesterday, but he's here. It's good to see you. All right. Good. So it's difficult to say exactly, you know, what has happened in these last 10 years and maybe even what have been effects from the Decades program and from the awareness raising around it. To make this link very precise, that would be a research topic maybe by itself. So what I can do is only to share a few observations as they have arrived at me, if you like, from maybe more of a frog's perspective, right? Looking from the local level into what was happening in the last 10 years, even not being able to make a real clear cut. Was it the last 10 years or maybe it was 15, 12 years or so? But I guess that's understandable enough. As ICLEI, we have been, Josefina also asked me to make this link to Local Agenda 21 and then the subsequent 10 years of Local Action 21. And I think this makes a lot of sense. And we as ICLEI have been the ones that very strongly made this suggestion for including Local Agenda 21 into the big Agenda 21 document. And this was successful, as you all know. It has gone into Chapter 28, and then also had quite a success story. And from time to time, we are also involved in surveying at global level of, so where are we, how many local governments have engaged, and so on and so on. Interestingly, I mean, we were engaged in a survey 5 years after 92, then again 10 years after 92, and the figures were impressive. Like in 2002, there were more than 6,000 municipalities all across the world, 6,400 something, that were engaged in this kind of local action initiatives in a very various, different, colorful ways, depending on local context and so on. And what I found especially interesting, and this is something that I think I should really pursue further, that I read in this report that at that point, 10 years after 92, which is still before the decade, that it says there were a number of priorities in these local agenda plans. And here it says, it is interesting to note that water was the common priority issue for all municipalities, regardless of their economic situation. So water had played a very important role. And when it comes to this question of where was most progress achieved, I find all municipalities observed progress in terms of public awareness and water quality. Water quality. So it seems there is indeed a link that we should explore further between water issues and innovative systems, approaches to local governance. Something that we should explore further. This is now referring to past, which is further away, while how has that developed in the last 10 years? That's something still probably to look at. Now, a few points now, observations, what I have observed during my time working with ICLEI, which is actually close to 20 years now. In the last couple of years, what I'm especially happy about is really to see that the recognition of local governments is now there in many areas, also in water. We had a lot of trouble to pull lots of people's and institutions' sleeves at the beginning to make them aware, listen, it's really important that local government is there, plays its role at local level. This is where the problems are. This is where they can be tackled. And now it's rather the other way around, that lots of institutions are actually knocking at our door to say, listen, we are doing this and that. Can you please also engage? We need local governments on board. So this is one really important development. And also, you all know the figures about urbanization. I mean, lots and lots of more people are moving into cities. So the urban context is becoming more and more important, of course, then also for addressing such issues within the water sector and so on. There are also lots, long series, I mean, of good practices. In the northern hemisphere, maybe we could observe a lot of really great, holistic, comprehensive approaches now to what is called integrated urban water management, which is certainly something that can never be fully achieved, but There's a lot of cities that are really doing an amazing job, also in participation with their stakeholders and the local people. In the developing country context, is often still a very tricky situation with, I mean, there have been more than a decade of decentralization efforts, but you probably know the problem that there's often more responsibilities moving to the local level while the corresponding capacities, resources are not following suit. And this leaves local decision makers, obviously, with a major problem. This whole issue of multi-stakeholder coordination, I think this message has now also got through. I mean, the benefits that are connected to it are pretty clear as of now. We do not have to repeat them too often again and again. The issues that have to be dealt with are really, really very complex. So you need also your people, your different institutions around you to solve them. But, and we see very much a local government as sort of the convening organization to bring these people together, because it still needs a coordinating body to make sure that all the different interests and activities and so on flow together in the right way. It's very demanding, so it also needs capacity building for local institutions. Multi-governmental coordination, I think this insight is now achieved, that it's difficult for a national government to achieve its policy objectives just by doing everything by itself. And the other way around, a local government cannot easily act and in a meaningful way and meet the needs of its local population without having a framework in place that is actually, you know, enabling it to do it in very many respects, in legal terms, in institutional terms, in financial terms, and so on. I would also hint what was said before at this collaboration between municipalities, directly decentralized collaboration. We see quite good developments there between north and south, northern and southern municipalities, but also between southern, from south to south. So this is interesting. We should foster this. Local governments can do better if they learn directly from their peers, and they're very interested in doing that. What is certainly an issue that has come up and which needs further observation is that we have on the one hand these local governments that are you know, challenged by more and more complex problems like urbanization, rapid urbanization, now climate change is coming in, and so on and so on, while at the same time they are actually operating in a context where there is an increasingly deregulated global economy, which is also looking at business in the water sector. And this kind of collaboration and sharing of tasks, and particularly in the water sector, between what is a public affair, what is a private affair, how can resources and capacities be shared. I think you all might have heard that there is a certain trend for remunicipalization. So some local governments have really made bad experiences also with the outsourcing their water services to private sector business. And obviously we have to see what the best mechanism is to make sure that the public interests in water are really kept if private sector takes over some of the tasks. Nexus has been mentioned before. Good to hear this. And from the point of local government, good to see that this whole discussion is increasing. I think lots of things are also being said that we have said for a long time before. We're talking about integrated management for a long time. And a local government is in a way a perfect institution because so many sectors are coming together under the umbrella of the local government, and they have to make sure that this is happening in a coordinated fashion. So this, I think, is also a very, if you like, conducive or positive development for local governments. Quickly, technological process versus political will. visionary leadership, let me put it that way. I think whatever we say, there's so much already progress also in the water sector. We have lots of technologies. We know so much about water, how it functions, and what we have to do to manage it properly. But to actually make it happen, we need the right people in the right place and also in the right environment. And we need really visionary people. We need the political will. If there is, for example, a mayor who stands up and wants to get things done, then it's more likely that things are getting done even under difficult circumstances. So to close, I think this whole local agenda, local action 21 movement has really led to some social innovation, new forms of innovative governance that have also had an impact on the water sector. I think it's absolutely important to make sure that local government is always closely included in water development at all stages. And I hope tomorrow, when we are having a full day of government perspectives on our issues, that we also have a moment always to look again from the frog's perspective, from the local level perspective, and what their role in the different themes will be. Okay, thanks a lot for your attention at this time today.
Thank you, Barbara. I think it's very significant that survey you mentioned between mayors, and they say the water was the first priority of municipalities, and the municipalities are the closest administration to people. They're the one that suffer really the lack of water. The thought that about cities are growing in decentralization, I must mention that this morning in a state event, professional from this Ebro Water Authority told us about the work of this water authority, and during decades the main work was to provide supply and sanitation to many towns, many villages in this basin. And they went to the mountain, they went to the south of the Ebro in order to, the most important thing was to supply water and sanitation and to provide support to these little municipalities that weren't able to do that by themselves. That's very important. So, first at the beginning, I raised a question about the United Nations and this Zaragoza office about their role in this decade. I would like to know your opinion about it. So, who's the first? Okay. Okay. It's no time. I leave it there. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. So.
Thank you very much, and we're sorry, but we have a lot of time tomorrow and after tomorrow, so I'm sure we can find some space there to continue with this discussion. Thank you very much to Adriano and to all the speakers and to all the conveners and panelists during the whole day today. Tomorrow we have the stakeholders sessions on their contributions to the implementation of the water-related Sustainable Development Goals. There will be parallel sessions of governments, business, academia, civil society, and the media. A note on organization is that 3 of the sessions will take place here in this building and 2 in front at the Trip Hotel, namely the civil society organizations and the media. But we will all come back here together to have lunch at 1. And after lunch, we would like to invite you for a group photo tomorrow. So we really invite you to join us for that. And now today at 8 o'clock, you are invited to a welcome reception at the City Hall on behalf of the mayor. And there will be a bus for you at 7:30 at the main entrance of the building here. Okay, so thank you very much. See you soon and have a nice evening.